Escape from Paradise, written and narrated by Daryl Ferguson. Prologue. The morning sun broke the horizon as the man set his gaze on the expansive, barren field. No grass, no trees, no hint of life. He took a slow, deliberate breath, drawing in the crisp morning air. He scanned the sterile expanse as if seeking something. Blueprints rolled up under his arm. The plans assembled themselves afresh in his imagination. The beginnings, the tools, the workers, and the final glorious result. The largest, most spectacular work ever attempted. It would take many years to build, and a lot of good men and women would die in the work. But this structure would save far more lives than it would cost. A strong hand on his shoulder interrupted his mental survey. The gesture fortified the man, and he felt his father's love. "Shall we get started?" His father's powerful voice filled the morning air, as if the sun had risen a second time, giving life to the ground and making time itself roll forward. The man tensed in glad anticipation. "Let's get to it." So the work began. The foundation stage would be slow, arduous, and costly. But the man smiled when he considered the completed project. He slid his hand along the blueprints. He would review them often, not because he needed to, but because he loved seeing in them the impeccable reflection of his father's love and wisdom. The words shook the ground. "Son, this is where it all begins." Chapter 1. Adam relaxed just under the water's surface and smiled at the muffled squeals and giggles of his little sister over by the kiddie pool. Hearing her laugh was the best. He blew the air out of his lungs and sank to the pool bottom. Relaxed in the weightless haven, he took a moment to enjoy the cool stillness before pushing toward the surface. "I would stay down here all day if I could." Every care released from his body into the quiet sanctuary. Eyes open, he lifted his face upward. Why is it so dark up there? He vaulted from the floor like a missile. A few strokes and kicks should have brought him up, but wow, it's deeper than I thought. He strained against the water as he swam upward. Why was it taking so long? Was the pool getting darker? His smooth stroke turned into a panicked thrashing. Was he getting close? He pumped harder, arms flailing. He pressed his lips closed with all his might as his lungs screamed for air. Dad? He expected to feel the rescuing grasp of his father or big brother any moment. They must have seen him jump in. He kicked harder. Am I even swimming the right way? He could hold his breath no longer. His thoughts clouded. He fought to hold on to consciousness. Darkness closed in. With one last thrash, he surged upward and broke the surface, gasping the precious air. But then it hit him. Something's wrong. The air, He swiped water from his face to find the nearest ladder. What in the world? Where? There was no ladder, or even sides around the pool. Instead, weeds, rocks, and tall grass surrounded him. A pond? How? To his left, he spotted a sandy area. He waded out of the pond, water raining from his wiry adolescent frame. What is this place? No buildings, no people, just a pond surrounded by rocks and trees. And the air was thin, empty, like the atmosphere itself was dead. He shuddered in the eerie stillness. "Mom? Dad?" The sound of his own voice in the silence startled him. Where was his brother, his little sister, his home? Where did everything go? Mind racing, he turned a full circle. There must be someone. He started up a nearby rise for a better view, his stomach nodding as he suppressed tears. After a few steps, his pace exploded into a frantic run for a higher vantage point. Atop the hill, his heart sank. The expansive view revealed only an endless carpet of treetops stretching to every horizon. No people, no roads, not even a path, no sign of civilization. Reality seeped into his thoughts like ice water, chilling his soul. He was alone in this place. Tears finally broke free. "Mom!" His voice cracked when he called out, "Dad?" Then he shrieked, "Anyone! Please help me!" He slumped to the ground, pulled his knees to his chest, and covered his head with his arms, trying to wish his way out of this terror. Was he trapped forever in this strange, empty world? If only his brother were here, he'd know what to do. He rubbed his temples. What would his brother do? Then he opened his eyes, wide. He couldn't picture his brother, or even think of his name. What's wrong with me? The image was blurry, the shapes reminiscent of someone familiar, but refusing to snap into focus. Still, thoughts of his brother, vague as they were, comforted him. Adam tried to imagine him walking up the hill, calling his name. Then he realized, if they did come, they wouldn't even know where to look for him. They could be at the pond right now. He jumped to his feet and ran down the hill, back to the pond. Still no one there. With a whimper, he began wandering around the tiny lake, searching for a position that would provide a good view of the whole area. If his parents came, he didn't want to miss them. He settled on a place near where he had come out of the water. After peeling off his soaking shirt, he laid it out to dry, then found a comfortable spot to wait. He shivered in the cool air and curled his toes inside his soggy shoes. Wait, why was I swimming with all my clothes on? He tried to replay the moment he'd jumped in, but it was no use. It was as if the depths of that pond had sucked in all previous memories like a black hole. He leaned back against a rock, then bolted upright, turned, and pressed his hand to the boulder. It wasn't hard like a normal rock. This isn't right. He ran his hand along the boulder. What is this place? He picked up a small stone and rolled it in his hand. He squeezed it. Then he ran his fingers through the dirt. Nothing seemed right. The stone was too light, pebbles too smooth. The soil didn't dirty his hands. He examined the landscape. Everything beyond arm's reach appeared flat, almost like pictures on the pages of a storybook. Things seemed real enough up close, but the farther a tree or a rock was from him, the less real it appeared. He caught his breath. In the distance, purple, red, and yellow rays shot upward. And there were other colors he'd never seen. They were rising from... What? A building? He grabbed his shirt and pulled it over his head. Now the colors were gone, but he could still see the structure. What happened to the colors? And why hadn't he seen that building before? He closed his eyes to replay what he had witnessed. The memory arose so vividly, it startled him. Yes, he had seen colors. They had radiated from the building, and they moved, shimmering like light reflecting off water. No, not like water. This movement was different, like the movement of a living thing. He looked again at the building. It was up in the hills, but he could see it clear as day, an old ramshackle cottage. The longer he studied it, the more his fascination grew. That cottage had to be his best chance of finding someone who might help him. But what caused those lights? He told himself it was silly to be afraid of colors. What could they do to him? It was probably just the angle of the sunlight or his mind playing tricks on him. But how could there be colors he had never seen? Once more he squeezed his eyes closed. This time the images in his memory were even more striking. And they were more than colors. He had not only seen them, but felt them. Like they held some kind of power. A power that wasn't safe. Maybe going there wasn't such a great idea. If he left the pond, what if his parents came and he wasn't there? They might not notice the cottage. He hadn't at first. He didn't want to leave the pond, and he didn't want to stay at the pond. He wanted to go home. He circled the pond again, watching for a place where he could see beneath the surface. If he dove in, would it take him back home? Or somewhere else? Would he come up at all? He waded up to his knees, peered into the murky abyss, and shuddered. He backed out of the water and turned again toward the cottage. In time, a few of the colors reappeared. Something about them tugged at his spirit, drawing him, despite his fear, almost as though it were a person, beckoning him. He blew out a big breath, gave the pond one last glance, and set out for the cottage. If he trained his eyes on it and kept a straight course, it shouldn't take long to get there. Within 10 minutes, he had lost line of sight with the pond. Between him and the cottage lay steep, rocky terrain, and dark shadows haunted the valleys. The knots in his stomach returned. Something rustled behind him, and he spun into a defensive stance, legs planted and hands up, but only trees surrounded him. He heard the noise again and looked up. A dark, churning cloud rolled toward him. The cloud resolved into a massive flock of birds. Adam stared, wide-eyed, then broke into a smile. Their wings whistled, and the pitch varied with their speed, creating a delightful symphony. Groups split apart, cutting, darting, and circling in a kaleidoscope of brilliant, dancing color. One bird lighted on a nearby branch. Its bright purple throat deepened into a darker purple breast with golden bars running down the underside. While the strange hues of the cottage had frightened Adam, these colors delighted him. After examining Adam, the bird flew off, rejoining the flock, which moved back toward the pond. Enthralled, Adam followed, hardly aware he was walking. Whenever he stopped, the birds circled him, then resumed their progress, as if drawing Adam along were a game. For Adam, it was a game. He waited for the birds to encircle him, watched them go again, and ran after them, laughing. The entertainment continued an hour or more, but eventually the sounds and movements of the birds grew monotonous, and boredom set in. Free from the distraction, he reawakened to his plight, and the terror returned. What had he been doing? How could he so easily forget his family just because of a dumb flock of birds? He turned back toward the cottage, now a tiny dot in the distance. How could he have traveled that far? Now it would take forever to get there. A blinding flash and a crack of thunder made him jump. Pouring rain pelted him. Adam dashed for shelter under the trees. A shiver ran through him. As the storm intensified, he backed further into the refuge, grateful for the leafy haven. He pushed a branch out of his way, and something soft grazed his cheek. He reached to brush it away. His fingers punctured the fuzzy little ball and dripped with juice. A peach! He licked his fingers. The juice tasted sweet as candy. He examined the surrounding trees. This is an orchard. For the first time in this world, Adam realized he was hungry, ravenously hungry. and the void of longing seemed to arise from deeper inside than his stomach. The cottage can wait, he thought as he liberated the delicacy from the branch. He bit into it. Pleasure coursed through him, head to toe. He had the strange thought that he would fight to the death for this peach. And yet, he didn't finish it. Exhilarating as the first bite was, he wanted another peach, a different peach. He dropped the first one in search of a bigger, juicier one. He picked another and another, rushing from branch to branch to fill his arms. The load spilled when Adam's toe caught on a stray root and he stumbled, landing on his hands and knees with a large green ball beneath him. A watermelon! This orchard was too good to be true. With a sharp rock and a little determination, Adam soon had red juice running down his chin as he devoured one piece after another. As he wandered among the trees, everything Adam sampled delighted his palate. This orchard offered every imaginable fruit, and many Adam had never seen before. Every bite made him want 2 more, but even after stuffing himself, he didn't feel full. In fact, he felt empty, not hungry, but hollow and unsatisfied. He ate some more and felt even less satisfied. He threw an apple against a tree and kicked at the ground. I hate this place. Still, he couldn't stop eating. As Adam ventured further into the orchard, travel became easier, level ground, and fewer stones and logs to step over. A corridor emerged. This is a path. There must be people around here. No sooner had the thought crossed his mind than he heard movement among the trees ahead. Someone walking. Adam's heart raced. His darting eyes could make out nothing through the trees. He thought he wanted to find people in this world, but will he hurt me? Or take me away? What if it's not even a person? Adam crawled into a thicket and froze. The footsteps came nearer, slowed, then stopped. After a moment, they started again. Adam held his breath until he could no longer hear footsteps. He silently lifted his hand, pinched a branch, and moved it aside to risk a peek. His heart stopped when the opening revealed 2 eyes staring at him a foot away.